Margaret Sanger, killer angel, as Dr. George Grant calls her. She was born in 1879, 10 children in the Catholic family, very poor. She grew up to despise poverty and wanted to do everything in her power to keep the poor from having children. She married at age 22, had 2 sons and a daughter with her husband. He was a fairly successful businessman, and they hung out in socialist circles in New York City. Well, before long, she wearied of the marriage bed with her husband and began to have a series of sordid affairs. Her husband thought, I'm really not into this, and whisked her off to Europe, where the whole family went. After 2 weeks in Europe, she decided she wanted to go back to Greenwich Village and to her hip socialist friends and to her sexual liaisons, and she literally abandoned her husband, took the children back to New York. He pled with her to return. She refused. The marriage ended in divorce, as you can imagine. While she was back in New York, she started handing out her missives called the Rebel Woman, one of which got her arrested. Her daughter, meanwhile, is being neglected to the point where her daughter got pneumonia and died. Okay? This is the type of woman that we're dealing with. By every biblical definition, if you read the Proverbs, by every biblical definition or ethical definition, Margaret Sanger was a whore. She was a harlot. A floozy is far too kind of a word for her. Well, after she was arrested, she did go back to Europe. She fled this time and spent 13 months there. At that time, she started hanging out with Malthusians and with Havelock Ellis. A Malthusian is somebody who believes that there's a limited number of resources in the world, and therefore we have to reduce the world population. We have to keep people from having babies because there's going to not be enough to go around. So the people that shouldn't have babies are the poor, the unintelligent, Negroes, etc. So she started hanging out with Malthusians and with people in the eugenics movement. As we'll see later, some of them were very closely tied to Hitler. She also had multiple sordid affairs with people like H.G. Wells, Julian Huxley, Havelock Ellis. You might remember some of these names from literature, from your college days. Havelock Ellis was by any Christian definition, a sexual pervert. She was involved in orgies, as I said. After she divorced her first husband, about 10 years later, she recognized the economic value in getting married. And so she married a very wealthy man, a fabulously wealthy man. And the marriage prenuptials that they agreed to was that she would have one wing of the mansion, he would have another. He could not visit her without calling first. He actually had to make an appointment to see his own wife because she insisted on being free to have her male lovers or multiple people coming and going without any intrusion or intervention from her second husband. This is who we're dealing with in the founder of Planned Parenthood. And she wanted American families to be made in that image. When we come back from this break, we're going to read some of her other quotes. They're more along a political nature, more specific about her birth control agenda. And you will see how Planned Parenthood today is reflecting the vision of its godless founder, Margaret Sanger.